When you're doing SEO, is you're building an asset. And when you're doing pay-per-click, you're just trading dollars for leads or for sales. And that has a limited shelf life. So if you're just earning income through Google ads, the moment you stop advertising is the moment you stop receiving your leads and your revenues. Whereas with SEO, you build an asset that continues to pay dividends even after you stop spending money on SEO.
Stephan, thank you so much for joining me on the Let's Talk Business podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So we've known each other for some time now. We're both together in a mastermind group, and I think it's just a good opportunity to remind people the importance of being around like-minded individuals. I learned so much from the different times we communicated or different questions we had in the group, and you were able to chime in. So thank you for that. For our listeners that don't know you, if you could give us a little bit of the, we call it the short version of what got you to where you are today.
Sure. Well, I started out studying biochemistry, and then I built a website for my department. This was in 1994. I dropped out of my PhD program, started an internet agency doing web design, and then within the pretty quick succession, did SEO back before Google existed, when I was optimizing for InfoSeek and Lycos and AltaVista and WebCrawler and all that. And when Google came out, I wanted to reverse engineer how it worked, and I really focused on Google, and all the other search engines, of course, fell to the wayside. And then I developed a technology for doing a pay-per-click type of SEO service where it was on a cost per click basis, but it was using a proxy server. And then I sold that company that had that technology as a software as a service back in 2010 and started another SEO agency shortly after. I got my earn out in 6 months, and then I jumped ship and started another company. So that's what I've been doing. I also have a few books that I published with O'Reilly that include SEO and social media and just being a user of Google.
Very cool. Very cool. So let's talk about first your experience, because you mentioned that you sold the company and then you started all over again. I think that's a good starting point. And I want to ask you a specific question, because we as leaders, we have to have passion in what we do. We have to appreciate and love what we do. Otherwise, it just doesn't work. And when I have the leaders ask me the question, what if I only have passion for money? I can't be successful in my company. And my short answer is always that you absolutely could be successful without passion, but you never reach the full potential if you don't have passion. So you could have the same type of company with passion, you just drive more and you just see more results out of that company. So I guess there was passion to SEO and to that business if you decided to go in twice. Is it just passion, or you saw something that other people didn't see? Like, what can you share on that experience?
Well, because I was such an expert in the field by that time, I didn't want to just reinvent myself from scratch. And at that point, I hadn't had my spiritual awakening. So I was just, kind of following my zone of genius and not where my soul's purpose was leading me, because I didn't know what my soul's purpose was. So I still do SEO, even though now I am aware of what my soul's purpose is. I just weave in to what I do to include things like working on a children's book series, working on a memoir, doing speaking gigs and podcasts on personal development and spirituality, because that's part of my soul's mission. And I incorporate my work life into this mission by picking clients who kind of gel with me on a vibrational level, or that are a match to the kinds of things I want to do to impact the world. So if they're helping people to maintain their health, if they're helping to, make peace in the world and to help people with their mindset and to connect to God, I'm interested in helping them with their mission by expanding their reach and their impact through SEO. So it all makes sense. looking at it from that perspective.
Beautiful. So we'll get to the awakening of the spiritual awakening. We'll get to that in the second part of the conversation. I want to first try to stick to some of the SEO questions that I've prepared. And the reason for that is because from when you started till now, web became it's a must-have. It's something that businesses rely on. In particular, search engine optimization. We just recently had this conversation internally where once upon a time, anytime you put out something out from your company, you were put your phone number, you would put your website address, your domain name, and everything like that. Today, most people, the way they want to reach a company, they'll just Google it and they'll come that way. Like we had this interesting thing for our own company. We just went through NPTEX, a rebrand. And we had this conversation, like in the past, whenever we put out a billboard, anything like that. Okay, so which contact information are we putting? Our domain name, our phone number, like what type of, and we said, most people Google us at this point, like they're not taking down the domain name to search for that. So we actually created now ptex.group, which is our name of the company, but it's also domain name. So it has like a dual purpose. You see it in our logo, but you could also use it as a domain name. So we stopped putting out like phone numbers and domain names as a place of reach, so to speak. So SEO became way, way more important than it used to. Once upon a time, it was more for, people just wanted to get, maybe you had some affiliate marketing and you wanted to have SEO to get, those ranking for that. But every company, every service provider, every product, D2C brand, everybody could use SEO. What would you say is between SEO and now pay-per-click, where it became a huge marketing channel for companies? What's your take as far as an average service business, how they set themselves up when they speak about digital marketing?
Yeah, I think the important thing to remember when you're doing SEO is you're building an asset. When you're doing pay-per-click, you're just trading dollars for leads or for sales, and that has a limited shelf life. So if you're just earning income through Google ads, the moment you stop advertising is the moment you stop receiving your leads and your revenues. Whereas with SEO, you build an asset that continues to pay dividends even after you stop spending money on SEO for years potentially. So that's really important for folks to understand. And also when you build up, let's say, your link authority by acquiring links, you also have a secondary impact beyond just SEO. You're getting PR, essentially. You're getting public relations hits from, let's say, getting into online magazines and journals and newspapers and popular blogs and so forth. So you can put that on your press page. You can use that in your advertising and in your content marketing. So it's got many benefits. And so the problem, though, with SEO is that it is a bit of a leap of faith at the beginning because you don't know when or to what degree it's going to pay off. And so it's a lot easier to put that money into ads and get a very quick return on investment, even though it may not be nearly the same multiple as what you would have gotten from SEO.
So let me ask you from a development perspective, a web development perspective and a web UI, UX, at which point would you advise a person building a website through an agency or whatever type of format they're building it? And today there's a lot of plug and play systems for website building. At which point do they start paying attention to the SEO part of their site?
From before you actually started the redesign.
Okay. So what would be that process? What type of practical information would you be able to give for our listeners on that?
Yeah. So for example, do keyword research beforehand using tools like Moz Keyword Explorer and Ahrefs and SEMrush to identify keywords that perhaps your competitors are ranking for and you're not, so that you can plan out, let's say, a learning center or some sort of resource area, academy, whatever you want to call it, that allows you to build out content repositories for those different topics. And if you don't know what topics before you start your redesign, then you don't know what you're building for. You're kind of flying blind. So that needs to go into the planning process before you start the mock-ups and the dev site and all that. You also need to look at what sort of link bait or linkable assets need to be part of your site in order to garner really high quality links with authority and trust. Because if you're, let's say, a law firm, there are a bazillion law firms out there, and law firms are not typically getting a lot of links. They're pretty boring. So if you think of, some sort of clever game or tool or quiz or a self-assessment or something, a personality test, I don't know, some sort of interactive experience that you can incorporate into your website and make your site much more link worthy. Well, you want to figure that out before you start building the site rather than kind of retrofit that in. Like, oh, I had this great idea for a reaction time game for, let's say you're driving and how fast is your reaction. There's an actual game that does that. I don't remember which site it's on, but you press the spacebar key as soon as you see the deer jump in front of the road, and it'll tell you your age by your reaction time. And then that could be part of your site, but you got to know this ahead of time before you start your redesign.
So I want to ask you, speaking from a marketing agency perspective. So obviously we're a branding agency, and we like on message, on target, and the brand should look professional, depending if based on the positioning of the brand. Sometimes you see a lot of SEO sites or sites that are very keyword driven, high, where it's way more text based, a lot of more on the site versus the prettiness, more the effectiveness versus the prettiness. Is there a way of accomplishing both properly?
Yeah, of course. There is a way of accomplishing neither. That happens a lot.
Yeah.
Like thin content websites, Google's term thin content means it's not just potentially a very short amount of content on the page, like, I don't know, hundreds of words instead of thousands, but it also could be a longer article, but not a very comprehensive take on the topic, very surface level. And so if you have thin content on your site, you're not going to do well. But if you are creating deep, rich, valuable content, and let's say it's very keyword rich, but you also make it very valuable to the users, it's not written purely for SEO purposes, in other words, then you have the best of both worlds. But that could be a very arduous task for somebody to read through 3,000 words of content. You have to break up the text, make short paragraphs, short sentences, add a lot of imagery, and maybe pull quotes or click to tweets and screenshots and YouTube embeds and things like that will help to add more visual stimuli to the page and make it not such a boring wall of text. So you've got to put yourself into both worlds. And an example of this is if you look at either of my two podcast websites, marketingspeak.com or getyourselfoptimized.com, every single show notes page for every episode is thousands of words. It's an hour-long transcript turned into a long-form blog post with lots of that kind of imagery and pull quotes and click to tweets and checklists. And every time a book is mentioned, a book cover, and lots of visual eye candy that helps to make the page much more consumable for the visitor. But it's great for SEO because it's not just a boring transcript, and it's also cleaned up to be in the form of an article without all the hemming and hawing.
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask you this for the next question, which like we see podcast is becoming very popular, and there's different ways how people actually structure a podcast on their sites. Some of them will have what you just mentioned, full transcribe with images and everything else, while others will just post the audio track and maybe just highlights of the show notes, maybe just some markers, so to speak, what's mentioned on the every 10 minutes or whatever it is. You say that it's worth actually going out and transcribing it and actually adding more than even the description itself, correct?
For sure. It was so valuable to do so. So my shows have been going for 8 years, and I didn't start this process of the long form blog post style of show notes until, I don't know, 5 years into it. But once I did, I noticed the impact that it was having. I was ranking on page 1 for the guest's name
Wow.
and so forth. So I was like, okay, this is really working. I hired somebody to go through my back catalog and do hundreds of episodes to turn those short form pages with just the kind of bullet list of approach that you're talking about with the guest bio and so forth, and turn that into long form blog posts as well. And yeah, it's definitely had an impact on our rankings and traffic to those sites.
So let me ask you, how would you, so obviously once upon a time, but maybe I call it once upon a time, maybe it's still active based on what your response to this. People used to have a blog on their website. So a tab blog, and that was a WordPress or whatever other platform blog. Would you say that is there a need to have both? So let's say if somebody has a podcast and the podcast has to subscribe, there's still a place where just having a separate blog with just articles on topics?
For sure. Just a great example of that is if you Google for biohacking podcasts, you'll see one of my blog posts ranking on page 1. It's not the Get Yourself Optimized homepage, getyourselfoptimized.com, which is a personal development and biohacking spirituality podcast. You'll see an article on my stephanspencer.com site ranking, and it's listing and providing some sort of commentary and review around each of my 10 favorite biohacking podcasts. And of course, mine is in the list. So that's an approach that you can't accomplish with a show notes episode page.
Got it. So let's speak about how social media plays a role with this, because we have seen a lot of people that used to have blogs or people, and then they went to, okay, now let's start doing social media articles and let's do LinkedIn articles and posts and then link back to my website and stuff like that. How is that part of the mix? Is that kept separately? Like, how do you see that as part of the content strategy?
Yeah. Well, if you post on whether it's LinkedIn or Medium or wherever, a valuable piece of content, it's a shame if you haven't posted it to your own site. What you're doing is you're building on rented land, because medium.com and Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn, those are not your platforms. You can have the rug yanked from under you at any moment and have your ads account shut off or your entire account shut off. And what's your recourse? It's a company that makes its own rules and has its own terms of service, and you may not have even violated it, and you've just lost everything that you've built up. And another thing too about social media is it's very ephemeral. Nobody's going to go back and look at the posts that you wrote on your Instagram account from 6 months ago or even 3 weeks ago. That's old news. So it's a flash in the pan. And you instead, with a blog that you might call a resource center or academy or university or learning center or whatever, it doesn't feel stale when it's a post from 6 months ago or a year ago, because you've organized it not by date like blogs used to be, but by topic and by solution. So you're creating a resource center, and that stuff will rank if you do it right, and it will deliver value for a visitor who's already on your site. I mean, it's a win-win for everybody. It's just maybe blog isn't the term to call it these days. That's fine, but don't abandon the whole approach. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater just because you've heard blogs are out of style and now it's time to be active on Instagram.
Got it. So let me ask you, to end the conversation about SEO, if somebody listening to the show knows that I'm not getting enough juice from my website, I'm not getting traffic, maybe it was done, months ago, maybe years ago, who knows what would you say is, the 4 or 5 steps you would say if they want to take action after this show, where are the places they should start focusing on, or what information should they look for to see how the website is ranking?
Yeah. Well, first thing is make sure they have claimed their Google Search Console account, because if there is no Google Search Console account for your website, then you're not even collecting data on the clicks and impressions coming in from Google searchers. And also, of course, make sure your Google Analytics and whatever third-party tools that you're using for analytics are all functioning. So, for example, if you have an Ahrefs account or SEMrush account. Make sure that you have that set up properly so it's tracking your website specifically. So you can treat it kind of like as a webmaster tool or webmaster center inside your Ahrefs account by claiming or verifying you're the site owner with that third-party tool. If you want to learn how to do all this stuff yourself and do things like optimize your pages with better titles and meta descriptions and add intro copy to category pages, all this sort of stuff, that's great, but it's probably not your highest best use. You could, if you wanted, pick up my 750-page book,
Oh, wow.
The Art of SEO, and start reading. But that's probably not your highest best use. If that's the case, then hire somebody or hire an agency to do it for you. There's a book out from Dan Sullivan and Benjamin Hardy called Who Not How.
Yeah.
If you find the right who, you don't need the how. You don't need, because they come with the how. You hire the right specialist and they have all the how figured out, whether it's for building links or for technical SEO or for keyword research or for content optimization or content writing. They've got the team and the know-how.
Yeah. So on that note, I have to put it in there because people ask me, our agency is over 20 years old, and they always asked us, do we do SEO? Do we do pay-per-click? And we said, we never touched not SEO and not pay-per-click. And the reason for that is because that takes a level of expertise and it constantly changes, and you have to be fully focused. So if you learned something a year ago, it might be almost irrelevant by today. So which means is you need somebody, you can't have an agency that also offers that. You have to have an agency that's the primary focus of service. And the second question we always get is, so who could you refer to us to? That's always a question. And it's very hard because sometimes even branding, but at least branding is very visual. So the person can say, oh, it's pretty. I love it. I love what you guys did for us. I have it on my t-shirt. I have it in my swag. I see it on my website. SEO is something that the average person just doesn't know what's being done. So I'll ask you a question, being an agency owner and have been written and being an expert and a thought leader in the space, how do you vet an agency? What do you want to see from an agency when they start saying, oh, we could do SEO. It's going to take time. Give us 6 months and start paying us. This is the steps we're going to be doing. How do you know if that agency is capable of delivering results for what you're looking for?
Yeah. Well, first of all, look at the websites of their clients. The folks that they list on their testimonials page, actually look at those websites to see, like in tools like Ahrefs or SEMrush, are they actually getting traffic? So if you go to stephanspencer.com or you go to my agency website, netconcepts.com, you'll see it's not just a testimonials page, it's a results page.
Oh, wow.
And it's got case studies with the whole situation, background info and the solution, all the different aspects of SEO that we brought to bear to help this client, and then the results with screenshots and charts and graphs and things that substantiate the claims that we actually deliver for our clients. If somebody says, hey, this is a really great agency and it's Bill M from Dubuque, Iowa, I don't know if this is legit. So I need to see substantiation. I need to actually see a video of this person talking. And even then, you can even have a deep fake video done with AI. I want to be able to go to their website and not just look at their website as a user, but take that URL and paste it in a tool like SEMrush and see if it's up into the right graph in terms of Google traffic and in terms of number of keywords that it ranks for. If you put any of our clients in, you're going to see results. I was just going over with one of our clients with today, Yosha Law Firm. They have a case study on our website. They have a podcast interview going even deeper into all the results and impact that we've done for them. And by the way, it's Jay Abraham's cousin that runs the firm. So that's how we ended up getting that client, was through Jay. So if you deliver, it should be easy for someone to validate or verify that that's the case. If you have no clue about SEO and how it works, and you don't even have the ability to pull up a tool like SEMrush to see that up and to the right graph, then at least download from my website, from stephanspencer.com, the It's the hiring blueprint, SEO hiring blueprint, and the SEO BS detector. These two
Very cool.
free downloads. One will give you the 7-step process for hiring an SEO firm or contractor or employee. And the BS detector gives you the trick questions that you can weave into the interview process, and they don't even know that they're trick questions. But when you ask them and they give the wrong answer, they have the correct answer right there on the sheet. So they know if they're being snookered or not.
Wow, that's powerful. So let me ask you one follow-up question, although I said it's the last question on SEO. Do you see a difference on websites being built on the common platforms like WordPress or any e-commerce website built on, Shopify, any of those versus custom builds and stuff like that, and websites like that?
Well, I do see that custom built websites tend to become much more antiquated than the ones that are using a standard platform like Shopify or WordPress.
Mhm.
So with a site like WordPress, a platform like WordPress, a site running on that can easily update its SEO plugins like Yoast without a lot of difficulty. Now, they can incorporate new strategies like, oh, let's add a resource center to our site, or let's change our category pages to not just be the 10 latest posts in that category, but also to have some copy on the topic on the category so that the category page will actually rank and not just the individual blog posts. This is relatively easy to implement in comparison to everything is custom coded from scratch.
Got it. So let's spend the last few minutes that we have. Obviously, you had a spiritual awakening, and you mentioned also the part of personal growth, which I love. And what I always tell leaders is you cannot have a meeting about thinking about growing your company if personal growth is not part of it, because it's going to come a time, Dave Ramsey said, that your company will outgrow its leader. So if the company has to grow, you have to grow as an individual because your responsibilities change as well. So that's just on a personal life. And then obviously in your personal life, there's the different pillars. Spirituality is one of it. Financial, family, these are all different pillars in life. On a personal side, I guess what transpired in your life that you took a different route, understanding of what your spiritual calling is.
Well, two things. One is I went on a Platinum Partner trip to India. Platinum Partners is one of Tony Robbins's programs. And on this trip, he had brought in these monks to give like blessings, and I got one. I got touched on the head by a monk, and I had a psychedelic experience. Everything was in Technicolor. I felt a deep sense of connection to the creator and peace and just, I don't know, knowingness. And so everything shifted for me. My whole life changed
Oh, wow.
in that moment. I went outside after this, and everything was in Technicolor like a cartoon. The greens were the most vibrant greens, like a cartoon I'd ever seen in my life. The green of the grass and the trees and everything. It was incredible. And then all these miracles started happening one after another, including meeting my wife 2 months later at another event. And I knew within 5 minutes of meeting her that she was my soulmate. And I prayed for her to show up 12 hours prior, wrote up a whole relationship vision and everything. And then, she's
Wow.
introduced to me. And I knew 5 minutes into meeting her that she was my soulmate. So I went ahead and arranged to get a ring and proposed to her 9 days after we met.
Oh,
And I
wow.
did that. Yeah. And she said no. She said not yet,
Not
which
yet.
makes a lot of sense for 9 days. And I reproposed 9 months later, and she said yes. So that
Cool.
was amazing. And then, other amazing spiritual experiences have happened since too, but I don't know how much time we have to go into all that.
Sure. So I will ask you a more of a fundamental question. How is that transpiring in what you do on a daily basis, or how you do when you do the coaching consulting, or how do you mirror that with the business side of things?
Yeah. So everything I do, it's like I'm aware as much as I try. I'm very, we all slip and we forget, but I try to be aware throughout the day that God is sitting beside me. So in this interview, I recognize before we even talked about this, that God is sitting beside me, and how am I going to represent him? And how am I going to reveal light in this episode? And that goes for client meetings. It goes for prospect meetings, for presentations about SEO at conferences. I will talk about spirituality or about God or about purpose or whatever, if the opportunity presents itself and I get a lot of guidance. I get a lot of nudges and this kind of intuition around what to bring up and when. And it's just a lot of synchronicities happen where it's like, wow, I can't believe you just said that to me, because 2 minutes ago I was talking to so-and-so and I said this very thing. That happened just in the last week. And it was something that, it's not common knowledge. I shared, this was a client, and I just shared that, sounds like you need to maybe do a full court of atonement with this person, this competitor. And she's like, what did you just say? I can't believe that you just said that. I just sent a text to my friend today saying, I think I need to do a full court of atonement with this person. So the synchronicities, as you are more benevolent, you get more synchronicities, and then you're even more benevolent, and it's just a virtuous cycle. So that spills over into all decision making, into how I even just start my day. So I'm asking God, what do I need to know or do today? And I'm journaling all the things that are coming in. The stuff that pops in your head just isn't random. Things that, stuff that comes across your kind of view screen in life are not random. Nothing is random. Everything is orchestrated in the upper world. So if you have at least a willing suspension of disbelief, then miracles just start happening in front of you all over the place. And with the distinction here, this is an important distinction that Judaism teaches, that everything is a miracle. It's just whether the miracle has been revealed or not yet revealed. So if you want more obvious miracles, pray for revealed miracles. But the unrevealed miracles are also miraculous and big blessings and wonderful opportunities too. They just look like a bit of a train wreck when they arrive.
Yeah, and it's also something, as soon as you start seeing them, all of a sudden you see them all over. It's like the example I use sometimes to illustrate this is, sometimes you look at the FedEx logo and there's an arrow inside of the FedEx logo. You could live for 100 years and not see it, and once you saw it once, you always see that arrow. So if you live with the belief system in God, all of a sudden you see it all over, and you see how these things transpire around you like every single day.
Yeah.
So that's amazing, and I'm happy for you, and I'm happy for all our listeners. The same should, if we feel that, all of a sudden, our meaning in life is so much stronger, and ultimately we can make such a huge difference. But it starts with our own lives, and then the people that surround us and the people that we influence. This has been great. So I know you mentioned a couple of your websites in the past in our conversation. What would be the best places where people could follow the stuff you do, and the places where people could get in touch with you?
Yeah. Well, if they're interested in the whole spiritual personal development angle, then I would recommend getyourselfoptimized.com and marketingspeak.com if you're interested in the marketing side of things, including SEO, of course, but also analytics and advertising and conversion optimization and all that. And also, if you're interested in working with me and my company, Netconcepts and netconcepts.com, and also stephanspencer.com. There are a lot of resources on both of those sites for SEO and just marketing in general.
Sure. So for the links, resources mentioned in this episode, check out the show notes at www.ptexgroup.com/podcast, where we'll link up to the domain names and the different websites we just mentioned. Let's close with the 4 rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Yep.
Number 1, a book that changed your life.
A book that changed my life. Well, funny enough, the one that pops in my mind is You Were Born for This by Bruce Wilkinson.
Well, that's a cool book.
And it's all about how to deliver God's miracles in life.
Very cool. Number 2, a piece of advice you got that you never forget.
Don't ever get angry.
It's cool. Number 3, anything you wish you could go back and do differently.
Well, I have 3 grown daughters and I have a 4-year-old son, and I am a better father now than I was 30 years ago. So my grown daughters are in their late 20s and early 30s now. So I would love to have the kinds of tools and perspective and connection and relationship with God that I have now and have had that in the past. But it's not that I regret it, because everything unfolds perfectly with divine timing. So I'm cool with it, but I would love to have had those tools when I was raising them.
That's nice. That's nice. And last and final question, what's still on your bucket list to achieve?
I would love to have a book on spirituality and like applying intuition in daily life and in business and everything else that changes millions of people's lives.
Beautiful. Stephan, thank you so much for joining us. I know your time is valuable. That is why, in the name of our listeners, we'll forever be grateful for sharing some of your time with us today. It's been a blast.
Thank you so much, Meny.
My pleasure.